A few words today, and I don't want to say too much because there's also a video on one of the projects, the ministries that the church supports and that we have supported for a number of years now, New Day Syria, that will follow after the sermon, hopefully confirming and affirming, embracing what I was also trying to say in the sermon. The title of the sermon, Diversity and Plurality. Now, today is Pluralism Sunday. I didn't know that until this past week. And if you didn't know it either, well, you find yourself in my company, which I don't know if it's necessarily good company, but we are company. The Pluralism Sunday, I think, is best explained if I read you a short quotation from somebody that I think has authority to speak on it. That is Dr. Polly Moore. Now, Polly Moore is a candidate for ordination in the United Church of Christ, but she's no ordinary candidate. She is a second career minister, or the intent to become a minister, ordained minister. And in her previous career, she was the vice president of Genentech, that biotech company, well-known one. And she also has a PhD in mathematics. So an interesting figure, and she wrote the following about diversity and pluralism. Diversity is inevitable. Pluralism is an achievement. We sometimes use these words, diversity and pluralism, as if they mean the same thing. But diversity is a given. It names the differences that exist, that we see around us every day. We can respond to diversity by ignoring it. Secondly, by minimizing it. In the third place, by trying to assimilate it, or by engaging it, trying to understand the differences and working together to create our common society. That is when you arrive at pluralism. In the often used metaphor of society as an orchestra, full of diverse instruments, pluralism is when you finally start to make music together. Now, a conversation or thinking about diversity and pluralism can easily become a very esoteric and a theoretical conversation that will not keep people's attention for very long. It can easily result in one of those conversations or presentations when after a while you say, well, so what, or who cares? However, I do think that pausing and considering pluralism and diversity is appropriate for us as part of a faith community, for us as part of a faith community and part of the broader church who finds itself in the midst of a pandemic, in a very difficult, trying time in the history of humanity, but also in a very interesting time that presents unique opportunities. I think it's also apt for us to pause and consider it in the context of us as part of the human race of global society, and for us as part of the broad ecosystem that we are embedded in and that graciously support and carry us and make it possible for us to live in spite of so much abuse and so much neglect. I think it is good to pause and consider pluralism and diversity in this time where I hope part of our activities as humanity will result in considering and reconsidering what we have accepted as best practices or the way to do things, to evaluate and to assess and to look towards the future and at least ask the question, is there not a different and hopefully a better way to do some things? I think it is especially appropriate for us as Christians to engage these questions and to ask of ourselves, considering our relationship with God and our relationship with this community of faith, asking ourselves this difficult question or these difficult questions, whether our religious activity and practices and our religious thinking, call it theology if you want to, whether that has perhaps become stale or dry or unable to sustain us in a life-giving way. It is essential at all times, but especially now, in the time that we find ourselves in, to ask, is our religious activity and our thinking, our participation in the community of faith still able to facilitate our conversation in our journey and in our activity of meaning making and giving meaning to life and everything that we do as humans? One of the questions I think that we especially need to consider is this question, if diversity and pluralism is the same thing. Simply put, should we look at all the different religions in a comparative way and try to arrive at the best one and pick that and then go with that? And I'm sure in the process, whichever religion that you have been brought up with, that you grew up in, will make the cut as the best one. And the God or the gods of that religion will come out on top as the best one or the best ones. I think simply put, pluralism is when you arrive at the place where you acknowledge the validity of a multitude of religions as sources of truth and ways and pathways to arrive at a place where it brings life to those who practice it and who brings life and instills hope in those who encounter the adherence to that religions. In this pandemic, I've read an interesting article, because one tends to probably read more than at other times, that said the church has been silent through this pandemic. I first didn't agree with it, but then I started to think about it, and it is perhaps at least to an extent true. I read something that Pope Benedict said, and there was some reference to churches not obeying the physical distancing ordinances and orders in some areas of the country. But apart from that, not much. And it is perhaps a commentary on the relevance of religion, including Christianity, for world society, or it could be attributed to a number of other reasons. I don't know. Perhaps time will bring wisdom for us in that sense as well. I also think religion is one of the phenomena in the disciplines or the societal activities of us as a human race that lends itself to be abused in very many instances of violence. Somebody wrote one of the books that I read about religion and war, made the statement, one author, that religion was the cause of all wars in the history of humanity. I don't think that's correct, but I surely think that religion can fulfill the role of instigating violence because it makes absolute truth claims quite often, and everybody involved in that religion is normally involved in a deeply emotional way, heavily invested emotionally, psychologically as well. But I also think religion can fulfill a very positive role, and it can be the motivation, the inspiration for much of what is good and what is beneficial. And in this time of the pandemic, let us as church and as Christians, and specifically United Church of Christ, this church, the Congregational Church of Topsfield, find our voice, not be silent. Let us find our voice, even if it is not through speaking, but through what we do, our actions, the life that we live, individually and collectively, to lead the way to pluralism, an acknowledgement of the validity of different religious paths to truth. Those paths that embrace and that is grounded in the source of all life, the source of all love, the source of all compassion and justice. And let us find our voice to represent that and take hands across all religions and also across all spheres of society, people who do not practice any religious activity, and even those that proclaim to be atheists, and all secular society as well, those that do the work of love and those that bring hope. Let us walk with them. Let us be one of the instruments in this orchestra. In the words of Dr. Moore, let us start making some music. Amen. I will now ask Mike to proceed to show us the video on New Day Syria, who's doing remarkable work in a region of the world where religious plurality has not yet been embraced, where it is still quite often the cause of war and wars, And let us also celebrate that we, as a Christian church, can support these people who suffer not only the pandemic, but the pandemic in horrific circumstances. And let us also give thanks for people like New Day Syria's workers, bringing hope to these people. Thank you, Mike. You can show the video now.
In the last few weeks, thousands of families across Syria have been forced to flee their homes and move to camps and makeshift tents across northwest Idlib. It is sad and heartbreaking when people lose their homes. In Syria today, people flee because they have to. They have no other option. New Day Syria works day and night to bring some relief, lots of hope, and to ensure that Syria's women and children are safe. New Day's 2 Idlib offices are located near where displaced families take refuge. This means that New Day is the first to know of the needs of these families and can respond quickly. One such example of this is New Day's emergency food basket and hygiene kit distribution. Displaced families, who in many cases have left everything behind, are greeted at the camps with baskets full of nutritious food and personal care items. New Day does not just stop at emergency aid, seeking instead to integrate sustainable projects that have a long-lasting effect. One example is New Day's Winter Preparation Initiative, which hires local and displaced employees to sew insulating sleeping bags for families with no proper protection against the cold winter months. This ensures that individuals have a dignified source of income once again, while providing beneficiaries with much-needed winter items.
وعليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أنا أحد النازحين من الشام وإجينا واستفدنا بهذا المشروع، ويعني هذا المشروع يعني أعاد لنا الحياة، وأنا كنت عاطل عن العمل والحمد لله يعني هذا المشروع يعني كثير شغل كثير ناس مستفيدين من النازحين والحمد لله رب العالمين. شكرا لكم على هذا الدعم. بس الفكرة والحمد لله رب العالمين.
Sewing and knitting is key for displaced women. It is an easy source of income and can quickly be packed and transported. This is one reason New Day started its 2 women empowerment centers. These community centers provide women with training in sewing and knitting, as well as teaching them how to sell their items. Academic classes and psychosocial therapy are also offered to enable women to lead healthy lives once again. These centers provide women with much-needed circles of friendship and encouragement. This is where your support goes, to empower and to protect. Protection can simply mean guarding basic rights, such as water. New Day's Water Initiative includes supporting a water tower in the Northwest region to pump drinkable water to local homes and camps. This tower supports water trucking projects, broadening water access to those in more remote areas. New Day regularly repairs and builds wells from scratch, making sure that nobody goes thirsty. Building bridges from Syria to the United States, New Day's container program works to support many of its on-the-ground projects. Medical donations, from as seemingly small as a Band-Aid to as obscure as pharmaceuticals for a rare disease, make an impact through one of New Day's partner clinics. Solar panels power temporary settlements or even whole neighborhoods, providing a reliable source of electricity. Toys, such as a stuffed animal, warm the hearts of Syria's children, comforting them in rough nights. But as important as these items are, perhaps what is more important is the sign that someone still cares for Syria. The impact of caring is deeply felt through New Day's Orphan Sponsorship Program. This program partners someone, like you, with a child in Syria. Some of these children might have lost one or both parents. Their lives are far from normal. They can't go to school. Instead, many children are forced to work long hours doing odd jobs like gathering cans or working in factories to provide for themselves and their guardians. This is where the Orphan Sponsorship Program comes in. New Day's on-the-ground staff regularly assesses communities, taking note of children who are not in school and who could use financial support. These profiles are submitted to New Day's orphan database, where they wait to be assigned to a sponsor like you. Once a sponsorship is started, the sponsor receives a profile of the child. This profile includes the child's age, background, and family information. Sponsors also receive a video update of the child every 6 months. Through this program, homes and hearts are expanded in an impactful way. Every month, New Day staff checks in on the child and their guardian, dispersing the orphan stipend after ensuring that the child is living a healthy life and has access to education once again. School is key to building a future, and the Orphan Sponsorship Program is building a bright future for Syria's children. Together with your support, New Day is working to create a dignified future for Syria. Amidst adversity and displacement, New Day is on the ground, making sure that Syria's future shines bright. One person at a time, one humanity closer.